when you get a situation where right after a game, questions are asked, things are put out of context, and if you don't have a very professional, if you don't have a very professional interpreter, then you have a problem.
So it was the interpreter.
So if you take, I speak Spanish and I speak English, and I listen to the question in English, and I listened to the interpretation in Spanish, and the interpretation was incorrect. It was a different interpretation, and both questions were both interpreted incorrectly, and both answers of Carlos were then misinterpreted. In the first instance, the way that the interpreter presented it, and you guys can all watch the footage, you know, I think Jeff Reeves says something like, you know, what is the truth, Carlos? And he refers to the point where the fighting has occurred, etc., etc., and Mancini has said Carlos is finished. Carlos then says, well, the truth is that at this point in time, how am I going to be in a mental state to play when I have... That's what he says in Spanish. The interpreter says something very different. In the second question, Carlos says, it is a well-known fact. Jeff Shreeve says something about, you know, the situation being that he's finished. What does he think? And Carlos refers to the question, says, it's a well-known fact that since my family was not here, that I had asked the club to consider a move because I wanted to be closer to my family. But now that I have managed to convince my family to come and live with me in Manchester, I have felt very good and comfortable again. And the interpreter interprets something totally different. I think what he feels from having spoken to him was that he has been clearly judged and you know, basically judged and found condemned before the case has really been looked into. And I think, you know, it's a very difficult position. I think Manchester City are in a very difficult position, and I feel that the club is, from all aspects, from both a technical and a PR are in a very difficult position. I think Carlos is in a very difficult position. You've seen this happen all through the summer. You know, I think we've seen Fabregas, Nasri, Modric. The list goes on, but those are obviously the high-profile names throughout the summer who've handed in transfer requests, refused to travel, refused to play. I think that is a problem in general.
Can you actually say they've refused to play, or they, with knowledge?
I can say that my opinion is that they refuse to play, but they refuse to play in a different way. But I think that those situations were handled in a different way. I think those managers handled them very differently. I know Carlos in a totally different light to what probably most of the people in this room or around the world know him. And I know that since he was an 18-year-old boy, you can criticize Carlos for anything, but one thing you can't criticize him for is his commitment when he's on the pitch. And you can never criticize him for wanting to play. There has been several times at Manchester City throughout his 2-year careers where he's taken injections, where he's played with swollen ankles, where he's played with in situations where maybe even doctors have told him not to play. There was a situation back in Corinthians where the medical department came up. It was the Libertadores, it was the Champions League of South America, semi-final against River Plate, and quarterfinals against River Plate, and the guys came up and said, Carlos cannot play, it's impossible. You know, he cannot play. We are medically saying that he's not fit to play. I then hear there's a massive row going on. They come up, and I was in charge of the team at the time, and the guys say, you need to get down to the dressing room ASAP. You know, and I come down to the dressing room and I say, what is the problem? And the coach at the time says, you've got to help me out. Carlos wants to kill the doctor for signing that he can't play. He wants to play, and he's the captain of the team. You've got to talk to both of them and find a solution. Carlos then played, and he played 90 minutes. Carlos, throughout his career, has been one that fights to play. Okay? I've never known him to be the contrary. And, if there is any issue, it's always because he is so eager to play.